Before Donald Trump became president, he was better known for this.
You're fired. You're fired. You're fired.
Donald Trump was known through and through as a New Yorker, a businessman, a socialite, essentially.
That reputation is now at the center of Trump's civil fraud trial in Manhattan, where he and his adult children face allegations that they falsified the value of their assets for millions in ill-gotten gains.
This is a rare scenario where you have a case of this financial significance with a player of this public visibility and involving so much real estate or so many assets in New York.
Here's how Trump's civil fraud trial could deal a blow to the former president's New York empire and the business titan persona he's built over the course of decades. Trump faces 4 criminal indictments related to his time as president, but for him, the civil fraud case in Manhattan court is personal.
This could have potentially crippling effects on Donald Trump's business interest in New York and the Trump organization's ability to continue to do business in New York. He spent decades pursuing business deals across the city, residential, commercial.
In a 2022 lawsuit, New York Attorney General Letitia James accused Trump and his adult children of engaging in a decade-long scheme to fraudulently and falsely value their assets, resulting in $250 million in unlawful gains. James, a Democrat and a vocal critic of Trump, alleges the former president was able to obtain bank loans on more favorable terms by overvaluing his real estate. These properties include Trump's flagship Manhattan building, Trump Tower, an office building known as 40 Wall Street, the residential building Trump Park Avenue, and an estate north of New York City known as Seven Springs.
Cases like this are not rare, but this is one of the most unusual ones because of the high-profile identity of the person involved, the fact that it involves substantial number of properties with high values in New York.
The lawsuit said the triplex apartment in Trump Tower was calculated at 30,000 square feet, when in reality it's nearly 11,000 square feet. That resulted in a valuation of $327 million in 2015, more than triple the record-setting price for any apartment ever sold in the city at that point. And at Trump Park Avenue, the lawsuit claimed 12 rent-stabilized units were appraised at $750,000 total. According to Trump's financial statements in 2011 and 2012, those units were valued as if they were unrestricted for nearly $50 million.
In the law, there is no bright line between what constitutes a reasonable, perhaps exaggeration, but when you get to the point where the statement of value is so many multiples, 10, 20, 100 times what would be shown to be the actual value, a judge or jury can draw the conclusion, if he wishes, and it would be justified that this is a fraud.
Trump has denied any wrongdoing and called the case a witch hunt. His lawyers have argued that his business dealings have been profitable for the banks involved.
The banks got back their money. Again, there was never a default. There was never a problem. Everything was perfect. There was no crime.
In the early proceedings before the trial, a New York judge ruled that Trump and 2 of his adult children, Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr., committed fraud. Both Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump have criticized the ruling, saying they relied on the company's accountants to compile their father's financial statements. Ivanka Trump was dismissed from the case after an appeals court ruled the state's legal claims against her were too old. In September, the judge ordered the cancellation of business certificates that allowed Trump to operate in the state, which could lead him to lose control of some New York properties.
You can't just take assets from somebody without compensation. If this goes forward, there has to be a process, which is certainly fair to the defendant, to Trump, to realize the proper value of those assets. Whether or not that Trump name is going to come off the buildings is very much intertwined with what is the way to realize the most value if those assets are sold.
Trump is not hiding at all his displeasure with this entire process.
This is a case that should have never been brought. It's a case that should be dismissed immediately. The fraud was on behalf of the court.
The Attorney General wants to prohibit Trump and his company from entering into New York State commercial real estate acquisitions and applying for loans with state-registered lenders for 5 years. In early January, James said Trump and his company should pay about $370 million in penalties, more than the $250 million she originally estimated for their ill-gotten gains.
There's a lot of questions of where Trump would get the cash freed up to satisfy that. One possibility is he would have to sell some properties off or other assets to free up that amount of cash.
In October, an appeals court temporarily postponed the cancellation of Trump's business certificates while his lawyers contested the ruling.
The irony here is, if this goes forward and Trump is no longer involved, the very thing that he says would lend extraordinary value to these properties beyond, for example, the appraisal values, would haunt him because these properties would no longer have the Trump brand, and the values that would be realized, one would think, would be substantially lower.
Some legal experts say Trump's lawyers seem focused on building a detailed legal record for an appeal.
The appellate road is long and it is not quick. And if we consider where we are now, I think that the scale tips heavily in favor of the Trump organization in being able to delay any final resolution of this case until after the next presidential election.
Politically, Trump has so far, used this and the other legal travails that he faces to paint himself as a victim of political persecution. In a lot of ways, it's worked with Republican core voters, but a loss could kind of turn the tables on that. Some of his legal problems could compound, and he could be hurt in the face of voters as he tries to return to the White House.